Welcome! I'm Johan and Lincoln.
And I'm Lincoln Murphy, and this is Impact Weekly. We're here to help you make your customers successful. Each week, we answer your most pressing customer success management questions by relying on our years of experience with companies around the world.
Let's get this going. Welcome back. It's time for Impact Weekly. We have a brand new question. Goal discovery makes total sense to me, but practically speaking, at what level, user, executive sponsor, etc., should I be having these conversations? That's one part of the question. Second part, and how am I supposed to make time for this when I have 40 plus clients? Help! That's why we are here, right?
Absolutely.
But I think it's a great question. But I think for someone maybe not too familiar with goal discovery and goals, maybe we should just zoom out and maybe bring it back a little bit to basics. So in Impact Academy, we define the goal as an objective plus a time frame.
So I think it's funny that you have to define such a simple word like goal.
Yeah.
It's something we all talk about all the time, but we confuse goal with just objective. And I think the key element here is that there's also the time frame. Without that time frame, you just have a wish. You have this thing that you want to accomplish, but there's no time scarcity. There's no deadline associated with it. And I think that's something that's really important to understand. So a great example that I like to use, even if you don't do anything like email marketing, you know what it is. You get emails from people trying to sell you stuff. So I like to use email marketing as an example. And this is one of those things where, as a software vendor selling an email marketing solution, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking people use your product to send emails, right? That's what the product does. That's clearly why they signed up. But if you think about it for any amount of time, you're going to realize, like, no, people don't sign up just to send emails. There's a reason they're doing that. They want to get people to their event. They want people to buy stuff from them. They want people to do things inside of their app. Whatever that is, that's the objective. We want people to come to our event. Okay, that's the objective. Well, the event is on this day. So now we have a time frame. Okay, so that's my goal. I have an objective and I have a time frame. And that's the reason that I'm using email marketing. Now, there's other reasons why I'm using email marketing. Maybe I have a list of email addresses already. I know that in my market, collecting email addresses in exchange for a report or something works really well. So there's other reasons why I've chosen this method, but my goal of more people to my event or more signups for my product within this time frame, that's why I'm using email marketing. So I think it's just really important that we understand that, again, whether you're doing email marketing or not, like, your customers always have a goal. Every customer has a goal all the time.
Yeah. And it's really important for us as customer success to understand this goal, of course, because if we take your example there, if we just try to optimize for the customer sending as many mails as possible, so if we don't know that their goal is to fill the event, we will think we're doing the right thing here, but that might not at all help them, fill the event. So, but if we understand that the goal here is to fill up this event, that may give us ideas to do a lot more that is around sending them emails, but helping them actually fill the event. So I think this is also a big point here relating to the question as well.
So this goes back to understanding really what customer success is. Take the email marketing context. Is success that the customer uploaded their email list, wrote an email, wrote a subject line, sent the email? Like, is that success? That's like functionally completing some tasks.
Yeah.
But what if those emails are not effective? Exactly. Nobody comes to the event. That was clearly not success, even though functionally they did everything that they needed to do in our product,
Yeah.
right? This is what we're talking about here. And a lot of times we optimize for that functional use of the
Mm.
product without consideration for whether or not that functional use is driving the result or the outcome, or in this case, the objective that the customer originally signed up to achieve. And I
Yeah.
think it's just really important that you understand whether you actively participate in discovering that goal, whether you really understand what your customer is trying to accomplish or not. That doesn't change the fact that the customer has a goal, right? Like
Right.
they have a goal, whether you choose to understand it and choose to participate in helping them achieve it or not. And I think once you come to that realization,
Mm.
you realize what you need to do. And it's not just to get them to use the product. I think that's the
Right.
key.
And I think that's also where you can make a huge difference as customer success manager as well, whether the customer will view you as just another tool or whether they will view you, your product, your service as something strategic, something really important in their road to achieving goals. But I think one of the points with this question is that the person asking the question here is talking about goal discovery, because it's not always obvious what the goal is, right?
We often know why a customer signs up, at least originally. Maybe we can just infer that from just simply what we do. Maybe we understand customers that are from a particular market segment. We can have some ideas of what they might be trying to accomplish, but that's also not always going to be the case. And so, again, we need to really understand what they're trying to accomplish. And the way that I like to look at this is
Mm.
customers come in with a goal, and then they're going to have other goals that evolve and change, and that they stack other goals on as they work with you. But your customers come in with a goal. You can choose to discover that, to understand it, to create a solution around that goal,
Mm.
or you can choose not to.
Yeah.
And you're just going to try to help them functionally use the product, and,
Mm.
and that's all. If you decide to be a part of the customer achieving their goal, so you discover it, you understand it, you create a solution around it, your customer is going to view you as strategically important. They're going to
Yeah.
see you as much more valuable. If you decide, and I word it like this intentionally because I believe that once you know this, if you choose not to go through the goal discovery process, then you are deciding to not be a part of the customer's goal attainment. If you
Yeah.
decide to do that and you just are here to sort of functionally help them use the product, then you are going to be seen as less valuable in their mind because you're not
Mm.
actually helping them achieve their goal. They're figuring out how to achieve their goal on their own.
Mm.
And the use of your product is just one of the things that's helping them. You're just another tool, just a
Mm.
tool in their toolbox, and you're just not really that strategically important.
In a best case scenario, they figured that out themselves,
Yeah,
but
right.
maybe they won't even, and then they won't even maybe even hit their goals, and they will actually leave you. So in the yeah.
That's a huge point. I'm glad you brought that up. Your customer is always going to try to achieve their goal.
Yeah.
If they can't figure out how to do that with your product, they will go find another product that they think will help them achieve their goal.
Yeah.
Take the email marketing solution. One year I worked with multiple email marketing companies, and it was really interesting to see how things worked in that industry. What I learned was that customers would move from one email marketing solution to another.
Mm.
A lot of companies would have new customers coming in from their competitors, and they would
Yeah.
have more customers coming in from their competitors than they would have net new customers using email marketing for the very first time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Why? Well, it's because a customer would sign up for one email marketing solution, they would use it, they would
Mm.
get poor results, they would blame that email marketing provider and they
Yeah.
would go try a different one. And same results, they would churn, they would go find a different one. And you realize like, okay, these products, are all fairly similar and the people using them are not getting good results. So what's going on there? And you realize it's because people didn't know how to write good emails. They didn't know how to write
Yeah.
subject lines that got open. They didn't know
Yeah.
how to create good call to action or create a landing page that people could actually sign up for their event or buy their product or whatever. So the point is, your customer is always going to seek a way to achieve their goal. If you
Yes.
don't help them or they can't figure out how
Mm.
to use your product in a way that's going to help them achieve that goal, they're going to go find another product that will. And even if that product
Yeah.
doesn't help them, they think it will. They know yours doesn't. They think the other one will. So they're out the door.
Yeah. And I think most of us would probably recognize that within our book of business or our portfolio customers or our customer base, we will have customers that fall into both of these categories where we have a great working relationship. We understand their goal. We're working towards the goal, and we'll have some that we are seen more as just a tool, and we don't know what's going on, and we're just supporting them. So within the same company, we will have both these scenarios, and here's where world-class customer success managers makes the difference, right?
What we teach Impact Academy, if you haven't figured that out yet, is clearly we want you to understand your customers' goals. We want you to stay on top of that, stay
Mm.
updated with that as your customers' goals change, evolve, and they start stacking new goals. This is an integral part of customer success. In fact, customer success is, to the way we define it, is when your customers achieve their desired outcome through their
Mm.
relationship with you, leading them to stay longer, buy more, and advocate for you. And the
Mm.
key element here is desired outcome, and desired outcome is goal plus appropriate experience. So
Yeah.
I say, not just to be provocative,
Uh,
that if you don't understand your customer's goal, you're not doing customer success.
right.
Now, I'm not saying you're not working hard. I'm not saying you're not doing something, but if we stick to the definitions here, fundamentally, if you don't
Mm.
understand your customer's goal, you cannot do customer success.
Yeah.
And I think once you understand this and you're like, oh, that makes sense. But when you're in it, when you're busy, when you're working hard, because I know you are,
Mm.
it's easy to kind of not see this as a priority. It's easy to not see this as really important.
Mm.
So that's why we're here, is to sort of take that step back and be
Exactly.
like, okay, look, this is something that is really important. But I want to make sure we touch
Yeah.
on a couple of things in the question
Yeah.
that I think are really important. And that is, at what level should we be having these conversations? Is this something that we talk to the end user about? Is this something we talk to
Mm.
other stakeholders? Let's talk about that. You had some interesting ideas on this.
Yeah. We need to understand what type of company, what type of customer we're talking to here to understand what level and, of course, who we should be talking to about these goals. If we start looking at a smaller company, the company goals are in general very much aligned with the stakeholder goal. So whether you're talking to a chief revenue officer or a CFO or HR or whoever is your stakeholder for your type of product, in a smaller company, the company goal will most likely be very aligned with that head of department's goal as well. So in that case, you of course start. That's the level we want to talk about these goals to understand the goals because they own those, of course. And then we have larger companies, right, where that alignment is not as clear between the goal of the head of a division as the company goal, right?
This is something that, outside of what we talk about at Impact Academy and when I talk to clients about, I don't see this being talked about anywhere. I'm not saying
Mm.
it isn't, but it's certainly not something that you see very often. And I think it's really important that we understand this. In my experience, what I see is in smaller companies, the stakeholders just have more of an impact on whatever the outcome is that they're trying to
Yeah.
achieve. And so if you said like a CRO in a smaller company has a goal of a certain amount of revenue growth in a certain time frame, they have much more of an impact on that because they're closer to the organization that's going to be
Mm.
driving those goals. And so if the company achieves those goals, the CRO looks good in their role. Like, so that's when we talk about that alignment being there. In
Mm.
larger companies, you may be working with somebody that runs a large part of the organization. They may have a big team, and that team may be very complex. This stakeholder that you're working with obviously has a desire for the company to achieve their goals. So the company's goals may be to have this much revenue growth in this time frame. But the person that you're working with,
Mm.
while of course they want the company to achieve whatever goal the company has, again, some amount of revenue in a time frame, that may not be the thing that's most important to them. Because
Right.
maybe it's just they don't have this direct impact on that outcome.
Mm.
They have their own KPIs, or they
Mm.
have their own whatever other
Yeah.
things that might be going on politically, socially,
Yes.
that they need to look good in their
Yes.
role. And I think that's a really important thing. Now, you gave a great example before we started recording. Talk
Yeah.
to us about that.
We want to mention this because you need to keep it in mind. Anyone who's worked in a big corporation, especially if you've been working in the central head office, you will see there is a lot of power struggles, right? It's like mini Game of Thrones going on where people are positioning themselves. And I've seen several cases where decisions were made that was not in the best interest of the company, but rather in that person's position, power in the company was the priority. So you need to be aware of those things. I remember one customer asking us to invoice them 2 years ahead, just before the close of the year, because that person wanted that cost on their books before the end of the year, so they didn't get a cut in their budget for the next year. So that's also very suboptimal in terms of what the company wants to achieve, right? But that's the things that are going on. As you become a larger company, the goals are not always aligned.
That's such a great example. And like you said, this person asks you to invoice them for 2 years, doesn't want a discount, like doesn't ask for a
Uh,
discount. Normally, if you're going to pay a couple of years in advance, maybe you would expect a discount. They didn't want that because they wanted to make sure that they were maintaining a level of spend so that their budget would be as high or
yeah,
higher going into the next year.
exactly.
It's not like going to take the company down, but it's certainly counter to how you would think things would work. But if
Mm.
you understand this stakeholder, they're so attached to the budget that they manage, then you understand that this is their motivation. And that's the point. Like, the more complex, the more stakeholders, the more you need to have these discussions, and you need to have these discussions at different levels. Um,
Right.
if you have a less complex scenario, then you're probably just going to have one conversation at one level, and that's going to be plenty. I would encourage you, though, to make sure that you are giving permission to your stakeholders to update you when their goals change and to
Yeah.
remind them of this frequently. Goals often are not met, and all of a sudden new goals come up
Yeah.
because priorities shift. But when a
People
goal is
change. Yeah.
achieved, they're going to have a new goal. We want to make sure that we understand that. If we're doing a really good job with the customer, they'll start
Mm.
stacking goals, right? So we
Yeah.
have different stakeholders, different departments, that whole land and expand idea. As a CSM, your job is to maintain that context around those goals. One of the interesting things, just to kind of round out this idea of different stakeholders with different goals, is something that I see a lot is CSMs that work with smaller companies will often spend more time getting to know the stakeholders in smaller companies.
Mm.
And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but again, those stakeholders, their goals, specifically their objectives, are going to be more aligned with the customer company's
Mm.
goals. I see CSMs not getting to know stakeholders
Mm.
in larger companies. It makes sense when you think about, like, just on the surface, that we kind of just want to be all business with those stakeholders in more complex, bigger companies. We don't want to waste their time. So we just come in and all we talk about is the company's goals. Okay, you need to
Mm.
add this much revenue in this time frame. Let's talk about exactly how that's going to work. When in fact, it's the stakeholders in those larger, more complex environments that you should be getting to know better.
Yeah.
You should be spending more time with them, understanding what their goals are. Again, I'm not saying don't do that with the smaller companies, but if you don't have a lot of time, so, now we're going to get into the
Mm.
other part of the question here, which is how do I do this with portfolio of 40 plus customers? How do I do this? Well, if you need to reprioritize things, I would prioritize getting to know or spending more time talking to the stakeholders in your more complex companies than you do right now with the stakeholders in your smaller companies. So if you need to shift priorities, that's what I would do just as a tactical aspect.
One thing from the question here, I think you can read between the lines here that this person is unsure how to work with these goals in practice. And I think we've been talking about goals now, like they just sit there and they're very obvious, and it's just to talk about them and then you can start implementing a plan and so on. But this is far from how it is in practice. Customers always have goals. We established that, right? But they are not always talking about them, and it's not always straightforward to get to them.
Sometimes customers are reluctant to even talk about them, not because they don't trust you or anything like that, but sometimes they've just literally never talked about this kind of stuff with a vendor before. So you're going to be asking them questions or asking them to tell you things that they have just never had to share with a vendor. So they may be reluctant because it's something they're not used to, or they may not know the answer.
Yeah.
So you have to guide them. And to do that, you need some structure. You need something to go off of. In Impact Academy, we teach our goal discovery framework. And so, again, however you end up doing this, you should have some structured way of extracting these goals and the details from your customers. Our goal discovery framework is a very simple yet effective way that we help you uncover the goal. We help
Yeah.
you discover the underlying motivation of those goals,
Mm.
which is a huge part of this. It's
Oh,
one
yeah.
thing to know the objective and the time frame. It's another to understand why this matters. Or conversely, what happens if you don't achieve that objective in that time frame? That's the kind
Yeah.
of stuff that you can use to really motivate action with our customers.
Mm.
We also need to understand who all is involved, where they're starting from. It's one thing
Mm.
to know where you're going, but to create a map or to effectively use your GPS app, you have to know where
Mm.
you're starting from as well. And then all of that comes together in our goal discovery framework. Have a process for doing that. But whether you use our goal discovery framework that you learn in Impact Academy, or whether you just figure this out on your own, these are all the things that you need to know, that you need to get your
Mm.
customer to tell you. Sometimes you're going to run into a situation where your customer doesn't want to tell you, they're reluctant to tell you,
Yes.
they don't know. And that's where we have another framework that we teach in Impact Academy, and that's our objection breakthrough formula. An objection is just anytime a customer doesn't do what we want them to do. They either tell us they're not going to do something, they tell us they don't want to tell us something. We need
Yeah.
to have a way of moving past that. And
Right.
objections are usually things that are only talked about in sales, but really objections come up in customer success
Oh, for
constantly.
sure. For sure.
And we have to have a way to work through that. And so our goal discovery framework plus our objection
Mm.
breakthrough formula, bringing those two things together is a really powerful way to really get to know the customer's goals and to help them help you
Yeah.
help them.
Exactly. This is very much a competence you need as a customer success manager. We have these frameworks that we can't go through them all in the podcast, but make sure to look into our programs. We have one starting, if you're listening live to this podcast, we have one starting next week. We'll post a link for that one as well in the end of this episode.
That's our success plan program. And it's all about working with customers in that ongoing phase of the life
Exactly.
cycle, which is
Yes.
often where a lot of CSMs will lose focus and lose direction.
Mm.
And so this will really help you with that. I want to
Yes.
talk about one other aspect that's brought up in the question. And that is basically, how do I find time to do all of this? I'm already at 300% capacity.
Yeah.
If you think this is something that you need to do, and hopefully you do, then we have to figure out how to shift priorities. Okay, so I
Yeah.
already talked about one way to do that earlier, but one of the things we need to do is understand what we're prioritizing over this.
Right. Yes.
And I would venture to guess that there are probably things that you are prioritizing right now
Mm.
that are low impact, that are urgent but unimportant, that are things that could be offloaded to an async channel that you're doing currently one-on-one in a meeting with your customer. So you could
Mm.
offload it to a video that you send them, or you could just have an email conversation. There are things right now that you are prioritizing that could be shifted away, and in their place, you could put some goal discovery conversations.
Yeah.
So I would have you look at what you're doing in your meetings, how you're communicating with your customers, and
Mm.
the other things that you're doing on a daily basis, and say, are there things here that I could deprioritize and focus more on goal discovery?
Yeah.
I know that you don't have a lot of extra time. I
Mm.
get that. Absolutely. So it's not about finding time, it's about shifting priorities.
As we talked about, this is a competence. It's also something that when you learn how to do this, you will be more effective doing this. You will do it faster, better. And I think it's also about bringing this into your routine, bringing this in as a habit in your way of working that will make this, it might seem, if you haven't done this before, like a huge task, but we've seen this so many times that when you start working this way, it becomes practice basically, and you will be able to fit it in your schedule. But of course, you have to prioritize it.
You have to be deliberate
Yeah.
and prioritize the important things, or they will sort of naturally be pushed aside by less important, but more seemingly urgent
Mhm.
things. So you have to control for this. You have to manage this. You have to manage your time. You have to make sure that you're protecting what's important. And so if you see goal discovery as something that makes total sense, then you will figure out a way to prioritize it. But it's not just going to happen naturally, right? Definitely more urgent things are going to always come up. And so you have to make sure that you're managing what's going on in your day to day.
If you're leading a team, if you're head of customer success listening to this, one thing we know as well around this, that customer success managers that are not doing goal discovery, sometimes it's because they don't know how to do this. And they're actually working on these other things. They're working through their inbox. They're doing other things because they're not confident in actually doing goal discovery. So that's something, if you're a leader here, you want to think about as well.
Our Impact Academy head of customer success training talks about leadership management and coaching. And we talk a lot about coaching CSMs to be better at their job. And one of the things we make sure of is our heads of customer success understand things like goal discovery and objection breakthrough, so they can more
Mm.
effectively coach CSMs on these very important things that they
Yeah.
need to be doing. We want to make sure that heads of customer success are focused on high priority, important things as well, and aren't falling into the trap of managing CSMs on the urgent, unimportant things, right? So we want to make
Yeah.
sure that heads of customer success are also looking at this the right way. So hopefully the stuff that we've covered today will encourage any of you heads of customer success out there to make sure that you are helping your CSMs prioritize this really important aspect of what they should be doing.
Super. So let's wrap this up in for this person asking the question. I'll repeat the question. Goal discovery makes total sense to me, but practically speaking, at what level should I be having these discussions? And how am I supposed to make time to do this with 40 plus clients? So the main three takeaways for us here is I would go with the number one here. And you need to understand and you need to remind yourself customers always have goals.
And I think with that, we have to understand number two, goals evolve, change, and if we're doing our job right, customers will start to stack those goals. We have to maintain and stay updated on those goals with our customers.
And to do this, to work with customers and to manage goals, there are two key skills that you need as a customer success manager: goal discovery and objection breakthrough. Luckily, both of those are covered in our programs. We have a success plan program coming up. Make sure to check those out at Impact Academy. Thanks for listening, and we see you all soon. Hey, thanks for listening. Do you want to bring your customer success to the next level? Check out Impact Academy. We have training programs for customer success managers and for leaders in customer success.